How can you train yourself to think radically?
Question everything. So question the status quo. Does something really need to be that way? You don't want to move so fast that you miss something or misunderstand or misinterpret something, but question everything, even your own assumptions about stuff. Be engaged with other people who ask you really good, really challenging questions. Because if you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just sort of like clicked into a new kind of track and just going.
Laure,
Hi,
thank you so much for being with us today.
thank you for having me.
What is the linkage between servicing someone's basic survival needs and servicing somebody's needs for connection?
I think they are all part of an ecosystem that we need to service in order to attend to the whole health of our community. So at Broad Street Love, while it's obviously incredibly important that someone gets a very basic need met, gets access to a hygiene product, a meal, clothing, a much needed coat, a fresh pair of socks, our intervention is much more about the way in which you get that item. So it's about this transaction that has the potential to be transformative. And in so doing, we're able to service the whole human being so that you are able to walk out more restored than you were when you walked in. And that means that you have the basic item that you need, but that you also feel a little bit more whole in your core. So I believe that both are equally as essential. I think that we can't only be thinking about fulfilling basic needs that folks might have. We also need to be thinking about the whole person and how we can restore the whole person.
How do you make a transaction transformative?
You provide that service in a radically hospitable way. And so how I understand radical hospitality is that I am thinking about how can we meet a need in a way that makes sense and is meaningful to the person who we are serving. So I think about it in sort of like the way a lot of us think about sort of hospitality. You stay at a hotel, you go down to the concierge, and you want to buy tickets to a play. And you say, I'm here to get some tickets for something. If that concierge went and got tickets to a musical theater piece, and that is not your interest, then you're not going to be happy with the thing that has been provided to you. It doesn't feel meaningful to you. It doesn't feel like the person has seen you. So all of our services are provided in this lens of radical hospitality so that we are really getting to know the folks that we're serving, how they want to be served, what way they want to be receiving the items that they need, so that we're actually servicing that whole person rather than just getting that core need met. So the way that that translates to our work, I'll use our hygiene service as an example. When a guest comes to our hygiene service, they get an iPad. They are able to select on that iPad specific items that they need, whether that be socks or underwear, deodorant, period products, condoms, incontinence products. People can choose the gender of the underwear that they want so that it's not a prepackaged bag of like, well, I read this about you and this is what you need, so I'm just going to give you this prepackaged item. Instead, folks are really able to have the dignity to be asked, what is it specifically that you need? And we will pack a bespoke bag for you with your name on it.
How much of the hospitality experience includes making a person feel seen?
So much of your interaction. So our doors are open to anyone between 11:30 and 3 Monday through Friday. You walk in, no questions asked. There's no form to fill out. There's no data that is taken at the door. We don't take any items from you at the door. You can come in and access services or just come in and walk around and interact with our staff. Everyone on staff wears name tags so that you can call anyone by name and you know kind of what their function is within the organization in case you have a question. And it is their responsibility to learn your name. So much of our staff knows many of our repeat guests' names. They know a lot about their personal history and their story, who they are. And that is really what helps us meet them where they're at to help fulfill their needs in a way that's radically hospitable.
Do you identify any disconnect with a lot of service-oriented nonprofits that are trying to fix a problem and kind of take a person who might be wrestling with an adversity and saying, hey, you need a change, versus your kind of approach, which is like, hey, we got the open doors, we got the name tags, you come on in, and we're going to love on you. Like, what's the difference between those two approaches?
I think a fundamental difference is that we ask our guests what they need. We don't assume what they need. And so like in the example I gave, if you go down to a concierge desk and you ask for tickets and they give you tickets for something that you don't want to go to, you're not even going to go to the thing, or you're going to go to it and you're not going to enjoy it. And then there becomes like this huge disconnect in your enjoyment of that experience. And that changes how you feel. It changes how you feel about whether or not you have been seen or understood. And it also means that some other, I would call them basic needs. I mean, even though we're not talking about sort of food and sleep, we are talking about love and care. So I think that disconnect is that lots of social service providers come in with a prescribed notion of what stability looks like for the people that they serve, what those needs are that folks may have. And then I think there becomes a disconnect in the way that you then end up working with that person. Because if you're trying to get somebody into housing, but that's not actually the goal that the person has or how they identify stability, some of our guests, I may say, you sort of legally qualify as someone who is homeless. That person may not identify that way. If they are couch surfing or feel in their minds like they have a stable place to sleep that feels safe to them, they may have a different goal in mind. If we have two different goals in mind, we can't actually accomplish anything together. So we're really about trying to figure out what it is that folks want for themselves. How do they define stability, happiness, joy, love in their lives? And then how do we provide services that help to stabilize them so that they can find those things that they need?
How does someone like a volunteer or a staff member at Broad Street Love expressing curiosity in somebody who may experience adversity help them feel better or start making, meaningful change towards a recovery?
Honoring and affirming the unique contributions that each person brings to the room is really, really powerful. I think when you're talking about somebody who's met with a lot of adversity in their life and is often unseen, and is unseen in lots of different ways, like maybe walked by and ignored if they're sitting on a corner, may be ignored when they go into a social service provider and feel like they're asking for one thing and then being provided another thing that they didn't want or didn't ask for. Being not seen it shakes you to your core. You can't find stability within yourself. You can't play off of your strengths when you're not seen. So I think when staff and volunteers learn someone's name, wish them happy birthday when they come to get their mail, because we realize that their birth date, which is one of the markers we use for our mailboxes, has come upon them. Asking somebody how a job interview went that we know that they had in the previous days. Being able to meet someone on that sort of human level has this restorative power that I think none of the other sort of like basic needs can meet on their own.
I remember, I think it was a couple Christmases ago, I was at the mall. I was buying earrings for my mother, and I wasn't sure what to get. I was between a few choices, and I saw this older woman. She must have been like 75 or something, just kind of standing there, just kind of like looking at the thing. There was nothing like weird about her. She was just an older woman standing there. And for some reason, I just felt like asking. I was like, "Hey, can I ask you a quick question?" I'm buying my mom some earrings for Christmas. Could I get your recommendation on this? And this old lady's face just was beaming, lit up. I was like, I don't think she's been asked her opinion about anything in like 10 years. And she walked away. She's like, oh, well, I think that one. That's a good one. And then she just walked away. And she was just, I could tell. Yeah. Like she had felt seen. Yeah. Almost an affirmative nature there. So just having your opinion asked.
Yeah. I think even just like giving someone space to be and to speak. Once I was walking through our multi-purpose room, which is where many of our services happen, and a guest pulled me aside. They said, "You look like you work here. Can I ask you something?" We have a medical clinic on site that is run by Philadelphia Fight Partner. They provide a federally qualified health clinic, so primary care on site. They now also provide urgent care to anyone who walks in and needs it. But that day, the clinic was closed. I think the provider was sick or something happened. And he said, I was expecting the clinic to be open and I really need it for this housing application. I need to have them sign off on something. And then he starts getting more and more irritated because I'm like, I'm so sorry. They're closed. It's not even us, so I don't even know why. And he just starts yelling, and not really yelling at me, but just kind of like yelling into the void. He's really, really upset. And I just sort of stood there and stayed calm and just listened to what he was experiencing and why he was frustrated and just let him go. I didn't try to intervene. I didn't have much to say because I don't have much control over that aspect of our work. But then after a few minutes, he sort of like I could feel his whole vibe shift. And he was like, hey, I actually feel so much better. He was like, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And I think that's so much about like customer service and hospitality is about providing that opportunity for people to talk about what they're experiencing. We're so privileged that we can like send a steak back that's not cooked to our liking, return a beverage that didn't turn out the way we expected it. Our guests don't really have a lot of opportunities to give that kind of feedback in real time in any of the different arenas that they might be receiving services. In some cases, it may even compromise their ability to continue to access those resources. So what a gift to be able to give somebody, to give them the opportunity to be seen and a platform to be able to speak about what's on their mind, even if it's anger and frustration with something that they perceive to be your responsibility.
Oh, I love what you say about this person is very upset and they're expressing a lot of emotions with you. And rather than you being like trying to comfort or like trying to like defend yourself, you just kind of had that gray rock response. It's just like, I'm just going to sit in the mud with you for a minute here. I feel like I feel like therapists are really good at that. Like a good therapist isn't necessarily a coach that's going to say, hey, you need to do this, or they were right. They're just going to sit and.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be in this moment together, two human beings. I'm going to bear witness to what you're experiencing. I'm not going to get escalated with you, but I'm also not going to try to guide you to a different set of emotions.
Can you tell me the difference between affirming and enabling?
So I think affirming is really about creating space for someone's strength to shine. So in that case, it's sort of giving somebody the opportunity to kind of off gas some emotion so that he could sort of gather up the fact that this person was then able to pivot and say thank you to me for absorbing that. This is a person who has like some good self-awareness, good social skills, high emotional EQ, probably understands systems pretty well to be able to come to that conclusion, but he needed this space to be able to gather himself in that way. So I think affirming someone is really about providing them with the space to be their full selves and to also bring the best of what they have to offer, both to their own life and to the communities they participate in. I think that enabling is more so about letting somebody lean into behaviors that may be destructive to them or to those around them. So I think a way in which we make that distinction is we serve a lot of folks that are unwelcome in other social service environments because they have symptoms or exhibit behaviors that other social service environments might find compromises the sense of safety and sanctity in their space. And I do think that because of the nature of our work and who and what we are, guests really do more or less try to bring their best selves. But that being said, if a guest is really, really heightened, really, really escalated on a consistent basis, and then starts threatening folks, then it's our job to say, you're not able to help us upkeep the safety of this space, so we need to take some time apart from each other. And that's where kind of accountability comes in. So that difference between enabling and affirming is sort of knowing when someone has crossed the line into, like, we can have some understanding for a person who feels angry. But if you feel like threatening people is going to get you what you need, we know that that's not a healthy behavior for you and not a healthy behavior for the environment.
It's almost like you're letting them in on it. It's like I think I've hung out with a lot of nonprofits, and sometimes I'll come across the one. It's like okay, here's your cookie, and off you go. It's like almost like a it's just like the people come in, we help them, and then they leave. But but you're like, no, you're contributing to this safe environment.
That's right.
Or not.
That's right. That's right. Everyone has a role to play in the organization. Our dining room is set up at these 8-foot round tables, and guests sit communally and are served by a mix of staff and volunteers. And part of the power of that experience of sitting at that table, I mean, many guests may sit and decide to sort of just have a private moment with themselves over a meal, but a lot of our guests do engage with one another. And to have guests at a table who come from different types of experiences, or even at a different place in their journey to stability, to be able to congregate and share a meal together and talk about what's going on, it's so powerful. It's stuff that my staff can't do alone. Volunteers can't do that alone. A whole organization can't do that alone. It really is built on this sense of community.
How much of affirmation is almost extracting your own immediate response to a person and like just almost having no response, almost just like saying, I'm just going to sit here and listen. I'm not going to make any comment.
There's a lot of discussion in the, at least I have a social work training on this concept of like tabula rasa. Like, can you come to something as sort of a blank slate and bring sort of like none of yourself to the situation? And I think that's unrealistic. I have a racial identity, a gender identity you can read on me, an age identity that you can, all of these things are assumptions, but I can't totally take myself out of the mix. But what I can do is monitor my own internal responses to what you're bringing up. So if you come in angry and that makes me feel angry, I have to think about that. Like, what does that mean? Like, am I feeling angry because I feel mad about something else? Am I feeling angry because of mirror neurons and our brain chemistry is just starting to match because we're in the space together? So what we really ask of our staff is to think about how you are responding to people in the space, because it has so much to do with outcomes. So we don't have a security team. We have a team of guest relations staff that train in de-escalation. And much of that de-escalation training is that sort of mental health 101, understanding the basics of mirror neurons, that when you look at someone's angry face, it's going to make you feel angry too, and you're only going to escalate them further if you match their energy. So it's thinking about how are you managing both your kind of internal vibes, and then also how are you externalizing that and managing the vibes of the room that you're in.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. I accidentally bumped. We were in bumper to bumper traffic, and I was just a dumb. And I accidentally bumped this gentleman in front of me with the thing like 1 mile, 2 miles an hour. I had an identity. He had an identity. He jumped out of the car. He was very upset. He was very angry. He was screaming at me. I rolled down the window. He was so angry, so upset. I looked at him in the eye. I just stared and watched him be upset. And I said, "I'm so sorry, man." And then he did the same exact routine again a second time. And he's like, "I'm sorry, man. You want to pull over and we can talk?" And then he just got in his car and he drove away. And I know for a fact, if I was felt that, leaned into that fear and was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Like if I didn't do what you're talking about, which is like control that reaction, that response, it would have escalated even further. I wouldn't even have had to been angry. If I showed any response, it would have escalated.
Yeah, that's right. You really have a lot of control over what is happening around you. And some of our de-escalation model is really based on a tap-out model. I mean, I talked about how tabula rasa is not realistic. Sometimes somebody is going to get in your face and they're going to say the thing that pushes the right button. And we have to accept that that's a reality, that everybody can't kind of come to this in a way where you're so sort of self-managing that you're able to kind of show up in every moment perfectly. But we have a tap-out system, and everybody on staff knows how to participate in the tap-out system. So if you see something getting escalated between a staff member and a guest, you know that maybe it's time for you to tap in and say, hey, Sean, head out. I'm gonna take this from here, and we will continue to tap out until the right person can sort of manage the situation to completely de-escalate it.
How does a team that's taking care of itself, taking care of each other really well and using the tap out system not appear like triangulation to a guest?
So I think a lot of it is about consistency, knowing that we all have each other's backs. So if in the rare occasion the staff member needs to come and get me because somebody has asked for, like, I want to talk to the boss, I need the boss's boss, they're looking for an answer that's different than the one they've initially been given, the conversation I'm having on my way from my office to the front door or wherever they are in the building is, what has this person been told already by staff? And I will back up what they have been told. I mean, unless it's something which has never happened before, but something like unethical or misaligned with our values, I'm going to back up what the staff member said, even if I have questions about it. And I'm like, I think we need to rethink this policy. We have to be consistent across the entire team. We need to be highly accountable for who and what we say we are. And so that's about a shared vision of how we carry out our work. It's about troubleshooting when things go awry so that we can debrief and try to make those conversations go better next time. And about knowing that you're there to back up your team members. Even if you don't totally agree with the way that they've managed a situation, that can be dealt with separately. That can't be dealt with in front of a guest. Because if we are each giving different answers, it deteriorates that sense of trust in the organization. And we really need to, if we say we're going to do something, we have to do it.
Wow.
Accountability is really, really important in this work. Our guests have been disappointed by a lot of different folks who, look, I think all of us have that desire to be able to say yes to somebody or to say, I'm going to get you what you need. We really try to not make commitments that we can't fulfill. And sometimes that means managing expectations. Sometimes that means using boundaries as a kindness. That stuff is really, really hard, but it's essential in providing services with real integrity and to building the kind of trust that we build with the folks that we serve.
It sounds like you take accountability for each other's mistakes.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. We are a team. We're all in the boat together. And so that's the most important thing at the end of the day, is that we're all backing each other up and we're all in the same boat.
What's the difference between reacting and responding?
So I think, often we are called upon to be reactive because things happen that we can't predict. We can't predict every single thing, nor can we sort of saddle ourselves with the anxiety of having to be able to predict every single thing that may happen. I think when I talked about sort of all of us being in the boat together. I think when everybody has a shared vision for the goals of our work and the core intention of our work, then they are able to react in a way that is aligned and be responsive sort of in a way that is intentional. But I do think this work calls upon sort of like a lot of in vivo decision making. And that is why everybody really needs to understand what are the sort of basic things that we are valuing in our work, and what are some of the core experiences that our guests might be having elsewhere that we're trying to rewrite the script on. So, so much of our work is about being radical. It's about the unexpected. We want you to have an experience with us that is unlike anything that you have ever encountered, and in some ways becomes sort of a healing opportunity from some of the more negative experiences. So we have a lot of intentionality built into everything, but also have a shared vision for why that intentionality is there. So, for example, this concept of enoughness. When I first joined the team, everybody always used to talk about salad bar moments. And at some point, I was like, what is a salad bar moment? And they said, well, years ago, they decided to pilot a program where they would offer a salad bar in the middle of the dining room so that guests would get served their hot meal, but could go up to the salad bar and get cold items right away. And it was, what you typically know of in a buffet, a salad bar, refrigerated, cold items available. And what guests actually experienced was this sense of anxiety about, if I'm not the first one in line, is there going to be enough of the thing that I want there by the time I get to the end of the line? And our work is about reducing that sense of scarcity. If you feel like there's going to be a scarce, an item that has limited availability, then you're coping with that rather than actually sitting down and enjoying a beautiful hot meal, enjoying being out of the elements outside, enjoying being with your community members. Your brain is firing on all cylinders about something else and then trying to strategize for how you can make sure you get that. Abundance, I think, comes with it some anxiety for our guests because abundance still feels limited for somebody who often encounters giveaways and things like that where there's an overabundance of something, but it is finite. So we try to make sure that there is enough of everything. So if we tell you that we serve meals between 11:30 and 1:20, you are going to get a meal. There will be a meal for you. We'll figure it out. Even if we have a totally unexpected number of folks come in, when we start to notice we're running out, we're going to quick put together more of a meal so that we can serve during that time. Now, to my earlier point about accountability, if you show up at 1:35, that we don't serve meals at 1:35. We only serve until 1:20. So we really have to stay true to that accountability.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that living with an abundance mindset, even if there is a lot of need, even if some needs are not being met, that's still better, that still leads to growth?
I think so. I think we try to lead with a culture of yes, not in the sense of being without limitation, but sometimes it's going to be a yes and. So sometimes it'll be an easy yes, whatever that item is that you need or whatever that thing is that you need, we have some way to service that today. Sometimes it's going to be yes and I can't do it today. It's going to be tomorrow.
But no yes buts.
No yes buts. That it really is a yes and.
Do you think that training in social services or getting, psychology degree or a degree kind of in the therapy field is something that's useful for more than just those fields themselves, but for places like helping out at Broad Street Love? Yeah,
I mean, I'm really biased in this way. So I believe that social workers can do anything. Full disclosure, I'm a social worker, but I believe that the knowledge that you gain in a program that helps you to understand human development and human nature is useful no matter what you're doing, whether it's building out organizational structure or it's designing a service or it's providing a service to an individual. I also have an MFA. I think that creative problem solving will serve you anywhere. So I actually really believe, it used to be that you sort of you went to college, you sort of picked a track, you stayed on that track, you studied for that track, and that's the thing that you did. And I really want to sort of challenge that. I think that we really need to be thinking outside the box. I think too many of us sort of stay in our lane and try to intervene on the world in the place where we were trained to do so. And I think that's gotten us to where we've gotten to, where we have so many problems that feel intractable. And it's because you have the same people who are trained in the same methodology, who've been working in the same fields, trying to solve these problems that are sort of like within their own ecosystem. And I really believe that any sort of training, whether it be a hospitality background or an arts background, I think you're able to show up for this kind of work in a really different way. So I use my social work degree every single day in the work that I do, but I also use my MFA. I also use training that I got working in professional kitchens. So I think that it really is like, what are you leveraging from your own experience, and how are you using that to intervene on the world in the way that's appropriate and makes sense for you?
As we've been making some significant leaps in technology lately, do you think that people, some of the chatbots are so advanced that people found that very therapeutic? That's almost my therapist to talk to the chatbot. I feel very reaffirmed. I feel very affirmed by the robots. Do you think that we're going to get to the point where we don't really need human connection social workers anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the point at which technology becomes like a replacement for rather than additive to community is a scary thing. I think that there's lots of ways in which technology can help even those of us in social services do better work, better, easier record keeping, even like fundraising strategy, being able to use ChatGPT to put something together so that, you don't need to use that time to write, a formal letter on letterhead. So I think that it can really be additive and can increase the capacity, but I don't believe that it could actually replace it because of things like mirror neurons, like the fact that like when two people are in a space together, that it actually changes the neurological makeup of both of those people. You can't replace that with technology because our bodies are not built for that. I mean, maybe thousands of years from now, we will end up being built for technology to be able to impose in that way. But we were built to be social beings. And so we derive so much of our sort of like spiritual wholeness and wellness is derived from sharing space with other human beings. And I don't think that a chat bot or a piece of highly effective technology could replace that. I think what it can do is it can help us honor that a little bit more. So if it opens up capacity for somebody, if technology creates more space for somebody to be able to look at a person in front of them rather than a piece of paper or a computer in front of them, then that's technology doing its best work. If it's actually replacing the social interaction, I don't actually think people are getting the same thing from it.
As an MFA, is a very beautiful AI-generated painting a piece of art?
I suppose it is, if anything can be art. I mean, I really do believe that anything can be art, but I do think we have to interrogate like who made it and what went into that, and who's responsible. Is it technology? Is it a person? Is it a mix of a person and technology?
Do you think that machine-generated art contributes to human connection?
I'm not sure. So I would say this is a place where I would want to understand the brain science between the way somebody reacts to seeing the Mona Lisa versus seeing a piece of AI generated art. Because I think that it's different people find different kinds of art evocative and connect to different things. And I do believe that there's a piece of sort of the humanity of something that is made by hand in some way that is just inherently going to be different than something that no hand has ever touched. And so, I mean, like, this is making me think about like cartoons. And I don't necessarily even mean like kids' cartoons, but like I was recently reading something about I'm forgetting the name of the show right now, but there's a show where at the end they state that it's not an AI generated show. And I just like, I think that's so interesting because it does change the way you sort of like receive the thing. And, as a child of the 80s, sort of remember the like hand-drawn cartoons where like every single piece of it was touched by a human being. and had a really negative reaction to like Pixar films when they first came in, because like I was like, there's no, but like where's like the human hand in it? And to go back to my earlier point about sort of like how, like, can it be additive versus a replacement? I think like, can it add to the capacity of the creative energy that goes into a thing? So like, does it mean that you're able to spend more intentionality and time on the human element of a script, or on like voice direction? Then I think it could be additive. But I think if it's meant to sort of like maybe we could make like a whole series that's completely AI generated, I just don't, I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that a human being can connect to that. And I do think that for our like own health and like dignity, we need that human connection. We were wired for that.
I'm such a nerd, but I mean, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite movie, and I mean, I love seeing the matte lines around the starships that like guy had to paint out.
Totally.
And like the brush strokes, it's like they had all these cameras and machines working to make the ships fly around. Like, I love seeing the brush strokes of the art, like the little imperfections.
Totally. And there's something like just so human about that. And I think like when we consume that kind of media, that sense of like, oh, other humans made this, I really believe is relevant in the way that we feel about that media, in the way that it pulls on our own heartstrings. And I think like builds to sense of like community and belonging and being seen, in some ways that we probably didn't even really appreciate, because it was just sort of like the way things were before we had all this technology to assist us.
How can you train yourself to think radically?
Question everything. So question the status quo. Does something really need to be that way? I really appreciate, I mean, this is a thing that I think in some ways comes to us from the tech world of like think fast, break things, or move fast, break things. I mean, I think that like all of us need to be doing some amount of that. You don't want to move so fast that you miss something or misunderstand or misinterpret something, but question everything, even your own assumptions about stuff. Be engaged with other people who ask you really good, really challenging questions. Because if you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just sort of like clicked into a new kind of track and just going.
Is the radical left and radical right actually radical?
I think that as soon as you sort of are like part of a groupthink, it sort of like loses its radical nature, because I think what's radical is to be the outlier, and also not to be like radical for radical's sake, like to just question something just because it's like fun, or it's a way of arguing with somebody, or it makes you feel better about yourself. That's not why you should be questioning everything. You should be questioning everything because there might be a better way to do the thing or think about the thing. And so I do think once you sort of get into groupthink, you're sort of like automatically no longer radical, because you're not questioning anything. You've just sort of like relumped yourself into a new group.
How does Broad Street Love think radically?
Language is a big place where we think radically. We try to question all of the norms of language in our sphere. So we have a group of folks who provide concierge services. Many other organizations may call those concierges case managers. I've had a lot of pressure over the last several years. People say, well, how are people going to know what they are if we're not calling them case managers? And I said, well, even if it's internal, like even if a guest can't fully grasp what we mean when we say concierge, and we have to kind of say like, oh, it's like a case manager, but these are some of the fundamental ways in which it's different. It means something for someone who is inhabiting that role to be thinking about that role through the lens of being a concierge versus a case manager. So a case manager manages cases, and cases are people, but you're at a certain point, you're just kind of like assigning a number or a file to somebody, and they become a problem to solve. Whereas a concierge is about trying to anticipate what your needs will be, what you will like, what you will connect with, and trying to be in service of that. And so I think language really matters in the way that we think about what we're doing and how we do it. even if we have to sort of be translators through that process, because our services may look a lot like other things that have other types of language. So we do that across the organization. We're always kind of thinking about how do we get better at naming stuff and talking about stuff so that we're not falling into those pitfalls of, just sort of like the norms in our field that can sort of like restate some of the inequity that can exist in a social service environment.
How can inequity exist in a social service environment? How does that manifest?
I think there's something very fundamental about you have a person who has a need. They walk in the front door of a place that services that need. So it's like, you have what I need. You have resources, you have manpower, you have money, you have administration, you have items that I might need, and I don't have those things. And I think, one of the sort of like consistent challenges that I think social services encounter is this sort of sense that like we're in this dance together where it's like, I have the thing and then you've got to figure out how to get the thing. It's really problematic. I mean, and we struggle with it too. I mean, it's anybody who sort of has those resources and is trying to distribute them to a community. You are the person who has giving to the person who does not have. And so I think some of the ways that we try to turn that on its head is through thinking about what are the unique ways in which our guests contribute to the environment? What are the unique ways in which guests contribute to one another? How do we help to uplift that so that they really can feel that sense of contributing to the community, so that when they walk in, they don't actually feel all that different from staff and volunteers? It's why we use the term guest instead of participant or any of the other sort of service provider lingo for the people that they serve. It's because you really are our guest, and you are equal to volunteer and staff when you walk in many, many ways, because you're bringing just as much to the table and are just as essential to the intervention that we're trying to provide.
Laura, what's next for Broad Street Love?
So I think, we're thinking a lot about how we can help other people question norms. I think we've done a pretty good job of it over the 20 years that we've been in existence, and we want to help our field to continue to question those norms. We hear a lot of other people using some of our lingo like guests for participants, so we know that we've had an influence on the ecosphere in poverty services, but we really want to harness that power and think more about how we can train others and cooperate with others so that we're doubling down on that radical hospitality outside our doors. We're also thinking more strategically about partnership. How do we put ourselves to our highest and best use? And what are the best providers in the city that may already be practicing radical hospitality, whether or not they're talking about it through that lens? And how do we partner most effectively with them, whether it's being able to make really fabulous warm handoffs for guests to make sure that they're getting to their front door, or is it about co-locating? We have 27,000 square feet of usable space in our building. We try to use every inch of it as much as we possibly can with stuff that is additive to our services to our guests. So thinking about what really effective strategic partnerships we can bring into the space to make our services even better.
Where can we find you?
You can find us at 315 South Broad Street, right across from the Kimmel Center in a beautiful old church. You can also find us at broadstreetlove.org, where you can volunteer or donate or just learn about what it is that we're providing.
Laure, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated this time.